Welcome. Greetings. Good morning. How's everyone feeling
Good, thank you.
after the late night? Got some rest?
Yep.
Great. We're going to have a fun discussion this morning.
You're okay, Vic?
Should be very interactive. We've got 2 exercises that we'll do together.
Why?
We'll have some discussion here in the room as well. So we'll be learning from each other. I am a student of all of this that we're going to talk about today as well. The title is Weekly Wins, Building Trust Through Progressive Improvement. The subheadline is This is Scrum Made Easy. This is Scrum Simplified. And I believe this is Scrum that's most appropriate for a rapid application development environment like we have Polaris FileMaker. First, we'll start with the question. What does your ideal workday look like? Ponder this for a minute. Let's really think. What does your ideal workday look like? And I'll ask you to also speak up. Mention a few things.
I know everything that I have to accomplish that day at the beginning.
Love it. You've got your plan set out before you. I know everything that I've got to accomplish that day before I start the day.
Want to have a dedicated time slot that I can focus on the stuff I actually want to do. But actually happen.
Have a block of time
Yeah.
where you could really get heads down and get after it.
A weather day.
Pardon?
A weather day.
A weather day.
We work in schools, so a weather day is we get to stay home. Balls, no
Love it.
emails. It's perfect.
Right. In the north, we call that snow day. I don't know what the right.
We don't have so much.
Yeah. That's why I didn't know what a weather day is. Now I do. Just a couple more elements here. I assume there's coffee involved.
Yeah.
Are you on calls? Are you in meetings?
I like to make sure that I schedule blocks like this is time to check emails, time to do phone calls.
Right.
I like that. It doesn't happen.
Yeah. What is it? Eisenhower said, planning is everything, plans are nothing, right? Or what did Mike Tyson say? You have a great plan. Everyone has a great plan until you get punched in the face. Yeah. Anyone else feel like sometimes the day punches you in the face? Right? And the plans go out. So we do need this element of flexibility. Sure, of course. Any last thoughts on an ideal workday? We'll reference back to this throughout. So keep thinking about those elements. For me, it's not stuck in meetings all day, every day. It's not emails all day. It's not planning all day. I do get exhausted if I'm making plans or writing out estimates or writing up, proposals, statement of work. There's a variety in there that makes up my ideal day. I'll tell you the number one thing that makes for an ideal day for me, and that's making progress. Here's my sister-in-law, Laura. Quick story. When she's out solo hiking, the number one thing that makes for an ideal day for her, making progress. Pretty cool story. She just decided she wanted to hike the entire Pacific Coast Trail and was not an outdoors person, but set out this life goal. And she flies out from St. Louis and does these little segments at a time. And she's completely solo. It's unbelievable that she's able to do that, kind of summon that inner strength for setting up camp, sleeping, breaking down, trekking, 15, 16 miles a day. She did a really smart thing. And it's sort of like the Peloton effect or the gym effect. And that is, even though she's doing this epic solo adventure, she invited others in. And she invited us in a way that really works for her. For those of us that love her and want to know that she's doing well, and that is that she used a little bit of technology. She has this Garmin GPS device that she keeps right here always. And in case she has some sort of issue, she's got an SOS button and she can actually get a chopper evac if she has some issues. It's really pretty cool. We can track her and we can see that she's making progress. And so there's this element of autonomy that she has, and then there's also this element of tracking. And I believe that we may even, the knowledge that she has, that we are there with her, that may even spur her on, so she knows she's not completely alone. So here's our agenda for today. We'll do a bit of intro and kind of context setting with how this falls in. As I said, we'll have an exercise, the progress culture assessment. We'll go into this framework, this 4-step framework, where you just want to be thinking about, am I hitting my reps? Am I releasing? Am I estimating, prioritizing, and showing progress? Release, estimate, prioritize, and show. We'll take another pause for a little progress tracker tool. I believe that Excel document that I distributed to you is the minimum viable. I believe it's distilled as simply as it can possibly be. As I mentioned, this is Scrum simplified. And we'll wrap it up thinking about kind of what we were just talking about that ideal day and those three, I'll propose 3 needs that are kind of behind that, what we need to feel like we've had a good day. Wrap up. So my name is Bill Bennett. Just a bit about me. I've got 4 kids. We live in the Midwest. We actually lived in East Africa for 3.5 years. That's where we were with our youngest 2. That's my son, Fred. He had an African name, which was Munezero Fred, happiness. And there's Mugisha Paul. That means blessings. And he was on my wife Amanda's back a lot when we were moving around. I'm also a professionally trained classical singer. That's actually what I did all through grad school, and that's how I met Bob Bowers, who was also a classical musician, and kind of got my first job. I was the very first intern at Soliant Consulting in 2000, so that's 24 years ago. When I got to Africa, I actually called Bob because we met this large American-run coffee exporting company. And amazing thing, we didn't even have a car. And it was a short walk from our house, and they used what technology platform? They used FileMaker. And they said to me, look, we need help bad. And at that point, we were year to year. We didn't know how long we were going to be there. And that's how we started a team. I said, I want this to be sustainable, and let's train up a team of nationals, college grads, really smart folks who just needed access to meaningful knowledge work. We call our model Upshore. We're trying to make a positive social impact, and we're hybrid here. About half of our team is here in the States and half is overseas. I'll show you a photo next. But before that, special thank you to Vislav at Soliant and teammates Sonia. Sonia built the survey, the assessment completely without me. She's in our Rwanda team in our offshore office. Bev, Betsy, Heather, and Amanda. Thanks as well to one of our clients, Olberding Brand family, Dale, Russell, Lance, and Lee, and the rest of the team. Olberding Brands does this pretty unique model. They call it their FileMaker Steering Committee, and it's every 2 weeks. And that ceremony is attended by the CTO, the directors, and they have really good engagement. And that was all in place before we even came along. So as I said, I'm a student of this whole world. And they have taught me a lot about how important those meetings are. Like I said, I don't want to be meeting to death. I don't love being in meetings all day. Same as other folks. I like to create things. But, man, a really well-run meeting that has a clear purpose and agenda, that has clear outcomes, that there's something that's at stake. It seems to be really working for them, and I'm grateful for it. Here's a quick shot of our team. I'm grateful to have some teammates that flew in. Hassan made it all the way from Dubai and others. So thank you very much. Progress principle. All the things that can boost emotions, making up that ideal workday. Motivation and perceptions during a workday. The single most important is making progress, meaningful work. It has to be meaningful work. And I left you a link there. This is from Harvard Business School, an amazing book called The Progress Principle. And that informed probably about a third of this session. Another third of this session is from Scrum methodologies that I've gotten to know and tried to simplify and consolidate. And I'd say the last third is from our own, shall we say, experiences. We've had many engagements that have gone incredibly well. I'm very thankful for that. And we've had a couple that were incredibly rich with learning opportunities. One brief story was with a book printing company in the Midwest. It was small. And I don't know if you all have ever experienced this. We started out with a great plan. We were going to replace this rather complex legacy estimating module. In addition to that module, the chief estimator was going to retire, and she had on her desk what she called her Bible. So we were going to codify this estimating Bible. If anyone's worked in printing, it can get pretty complex pretty quickly when you're talking about, the backs and the bindings and all these different cut and fold options. It's pretty complex. And then they had some significant leadership changes. Owner of the business was going through some pretty significant personal stuff, and behind the scenes, they were preparing to sell the business. There's plenty of things out of our control. But the one thing for sure to do over again is that we were very waterfall, right? And I'm sure many of us have been stuck there. We're going to replace that old legacy system once we've really built everything out. Once it's really awesome and we've codified the entire estimating Bible into this new solution, then we'll cut over. To do it over again, I would have said anything but that, right? Let's get creative. Let me integrate or migrate nightly from your old system. Let's build reports that flow into your new system. Let's somehow chop up this scope creatively. And I believe it would have been a dramatically different engagement for that. So we did kind of a crazy thing. I sometimes like to have a little fun and some dramatics. I filled up a baby pool in my backyard, and we held a Viking funeral live on Zoom. I had a trash can sitting in the middle. It's a true story. And we lit on fire words like fixed bid. We lit on fire words like even the word project, I feel, can be sometimes a project management. We need a project manager. Sometimes those can anchor you into a certain waterfall mindset, let's say. Truth is, Scrum is really hard, I feel. Claris FileMaker, I don't know if you know this, did not start doing agile software development until about 2 years ago. Right? I'm getting some nods, so that sounds right. So that means for the entire previous 20 years, they were not doing this. And I believe Scrum is often more appropriate for larger teams. If you're working in teams of 1 and 2 and sometimes 3, you need something different. So that's how we fit in. We are what Mislav was joking with me. It's like you're talking about Scrum, but it's Scrum-like. Here's the overall game plan. I put R at the top because I believe it's the most important, but it really might start, like any life cycle, it might start over here on the side. How many of us are actually making estimates? If you're in-house working on projects, true confessions, those can be really difficult. If someone's not sort of pulling those out of you, I don't know about you, but I can find that they can be effortful to do. How many of us have a regular cadence of meetings that are going to reprioritize the backlog? Good. So we're doing this, and we're going to learn a lot. How many of us have a discipline of regularly showing our progress, even when that progress is partial? Yeah. Every meeting, as far as I'm concerned, should start with a screen share. Show our work. Sometimes it's not complete, but let's show our work. And then let's be incredibly creative, innovative, how we can incrementally release our solutions. I believe even if it feels more expensive, even if it eats up more timeline, why do you need access to that old system? It's the thing that we're trying to kill. But if we can find ways to sort of like play Frogger, we can make ourselves a way to find across the street. Let's pause there. Time for the progress culture assessment. I'll flip into FileMaker. Most of you should have this. If not, we can probably airdrop it around. And if not, that's okay too. If you've got pen and paper, that totally works. What I'll start by doing is just kind of reading through the left side, and I'll read through the right side. Welcome. You can take this on sort of behalf of a specific project. If you're a consultant, think about perhaps a particular client engagement that's kind of maybe politically charged or it's complicated. You can take this on behalf of your entire organization if you're in-house. You may have the feeling that nothing gets done around here, right? You might have a business culture or a nonprofit culture that you have a sense that nothing seems to get done around here. And these are 12 elements that come out of the progress principle as well as Scrum and my own experiences, and that I would say may be going on in those cases. You may find that nothing gets done around here. There's not a lot of culture for brainstorming. There's no new ideas that are allowed. You might not have goals, or they might just be meaningless. You might not have a lot of autonomy. No one's getting after it. No effort that's getting put in, especially at the start. Ever experienced that one where, hey, we've got this big idea, and then you meet again, and no one's done anything? It can happen. You may feel constrained on a lack of resources or timeline. Perhaps the leadership doesn't quite understand and recognize that. When in the Kennedy administration we were making our moonshot, that was all waterfall, but there was a huge budget, 4% of our total national spending across all education, healthcare, everything else. 4% was going just to the moonshot. And so you can be high on some of these things and low on some of these things and still make a ton of progress. You may not have a lot of engagement. People just are not providing you feedback. Might not have a great planning mechanism or a great way to track, and we'll talk about that today. You may not have a culture where you're showing your work consistently, or others are showing their work consistently. That things are not being released, they're stuck, they're not getting completed. That afterwards you don't have a clear, clean debrief. You can get the people that can get a little grumpy and frustrated. It could be a culture of disrespect and discouragement and maybe even antagonism. That's what it feels like to work at a place where nothing seems to get done around here. By contrast, if you're doing great and man, we're just taking off wins, things seem to get done. These are going to be 12 elements. We're going to have a lot of good brainstorming. We're going to have goals that are out there. We are going to have areas of autonomy and ownership. We're going to be putting in significant effort consistently. We are going to be given significant budget and timelines sort of by leadership. We're going to have constructive and regular feedback. We will have good tracking mechanisms that are shared, they're published, and they have these essential elements in them. Those wins will be tangible and they will actually derive benefits. Thinking back to that book printing company, I needed someone early stages, we call it first fruits, to start experiencing the joys of those first fruits, to derive a tangible benefit, whatever it is. That would have helped us break the seal. We need to also be able to have a culture where we can learn, where we can debrief. At Soliant, we used to call it the knowledge management team, which I had the privilege of leading with Steve Lane for many years. It was a wealth of opportunity to learn. How did it go? Amazing what happens when you ask that question. You're willing to change our process. What could we have done better? There's a sense of respect and encouragement and camaraderie, personal support. So I'll give you a few minutes with that. Okay, go ahead and fill that out. If you just have paper and pen, you can look right up on the screen and you'll be able to tally up your scores manually as well. Let me know and I can scroll down for you. Pleasure. Any questions? Norman.
On number 6, can you define, maybe there's not a way to define it, but regular, like what kind of interval you're typically see with that?
We have a saying internally that everyone gets a little love every 2 weeks, right? I do find we define our sprints as 2-week sprints. I think you could have a week or a month setting. Challenge I've found, right, is even if everything's going well, at go dark and there's a certain lack of communication, and that trust can erode so quickly. Not sure if you've ever experienced that, but yeah, I'd like to see at least a regular standing meeting for anything that we're really working on, both internally and externally. If it's an initiative that's important, there must be a meeting at least every 2 weeks, what we usually go in.
Find that there's an acceleration that happens as the project progresses where you need to shorten that interval in order to keep rolling.
Absolutely, yeah. And those are, I'm mainly thinking about kind of that Scrum prioritization, backlog, organization meeting. We call it a progress meeting. But working sessions and dailies, sometimes especially, you're absolutely right, down the stretch, you've really gotta be much more frequent. What have you experienced?
Exactly that, and that 2-week interval is that's sort of our starting interval.
Yeah.
Because there's not much to show at the beginning, right?
That's right.
You're doing a lot of back end work,
That's right.
When it's time to shorten that interval, everybody knows it.
Yeah.
It just kind of naturally happens.
Yeah. The fun one on this idea of showing the back end work, and I'll scroll down again here. Keep following along. You ever been to a quick oil change place, Jiffy Lube or something like that, and they have clearly taught the techs that you must bring that dirty oil filter or that dirty air filter right up to the window? Let me show you what's going on with your windshield wipers. Now, some executive created that years ago and said that this is a part of our process, and they taught it very consistently. I always smile when they do it. I don't know what an oil filter exactly does. I don't know what I'm looking at. How do I identify that air filter is bad and needs to be replaced? But I can see the dirt, and it's so much different than just someone popping my hood and doing something that I have no visibility into at all, and then you give them your credit card. At least I'm purchasing something. And so I do even early stages. We're often encouraging each other, and I'll do it as well. As I may be short with it, but I will show under the hood, right? Here's some of the infrastructure that we've started to build out. I want you to have a basic sense of the data model. And we'll get into even showing scripts. Have to probably be relatively short and sweet with certain audiences that I don't need to see all of that, right?
Yeah.
But if there's some good logic, Software is Eating the World was a book written 10 years ago. In 10 years from now, you're either going to be working programming the robots, right? Or your role will have dramatically shifted. So the importance of having even the layperson start to see our code, start to see under the hood, I believe builds trust, even if they don't fully understand what it is. Maybe another minute or two with the survey, and then we'll go around. There's 3 last questions for those that are using pen and paper. And then at the bottom, you should see a score. It's really just totaling up the 12 questions times 5 divided by 60. And that'll get you to a basic percentage. I'm very, very curious. It's the first time I've ever run this with a group. Any folks have theirs finalized? Are you anyone above 80%, let's say? Okay.
I picked a pet project.
You picked a pet project. That project's going really well, and it has all these elements.
Great client.
Yeah, neat. Well, that's encouraging. If nothing else, I think a lot of us in the room are doing a lot of this, and I think if nothing else, it's just to get a little bit more encouragement that we can go further. Anyone in that middle ground, perhaps in the 60s and 70s? I think that's probably a lot of us. There's some elements in there for you. Maybe even go into, sort your answers and sort them low to high, and look at those 2 or 3 that are kind of maybe the lowest on the list. And then I would say also think about which ones of those are going to be the easiest to implement. Some of these may be incredibly big, boulders that you can't move out of the way. There's some authority we're not given to sort of sometimes change cultures that we're working within. But I also believe, a part of what we're doing today is that you hopefully will be able to go back with a bit of an action plan to some of those clients and some of those organizations. Perhaps have a fresh conversation and say, hey, I'm in a room full of really incredible colleagues from across the world. And all of us were talking about some of these things. So let me bring this fresh information to you and see where you can move that forward. Anyone below 60? Anyone that's really hitting?
How many points are these worth?
Yeah, so you should see this score will pop up in this dark blue.
I'm just doing it on paper.
If you're doing it on paper, take your total score, add up whether it's a bunch of 5s or some 4s. There's 12 questions. So add up those individual numbers and you'll divide by 60. 5 times 12 is 60. Okay? So let's just do it manually real quick. So call that a 5-pointer, a 4-pointer, and a 5-pointer. So that's 14 points. Okay? I'm sorry, I thought I left some numbers across the top. That's what I was referring to those points. So tally those up and then divide by 60, and that should get you to that sense of that score. Okay? So if you're in that lowest bracket, today is going to be probably a big opportunity for you to move forward. To say, okay, wow, we do need to get some of these basic structures in place. Awesome. Let's dive in. Ready for this? Yeah. Here are our reps model in detail. We'll start with E. That is often where things start. The first rule of estimates is we've got to do them, right? Sometimes estimates can feel very constraining. Am I going to be held to this? I don't know if you ever feel that, but it's sort of like the sister-in-law, Laura, on the hike. That tracking mechanism can actually create some more freedom for you to have those ideal days. Remember we talked at the beginning about that block schedule, that ability to just go heads down and just start creating the solutions. I believe that a great plan and a great estimate can unlock that block schedule. I'm sometimes in the position now making decisions, working with my teammates of what are we working on, what are we not working on. If someone comes to me with a great estimate and a great plan, they get a lot of autonomy. If they don't, they tend to get a little bit less autonomy because I'm just not sure what that's going to look like. This is also another great one from Mislav, where he says, look, we want to make those plans as small as possible. Well, maybe not as small as possible. Maybe that's a little overboard, but smaller than you might think, I think was one of the things he expressed to me. We want to break down our task lists into something like, at the very least, a half day. If you have a teammate or yourself, or you're working on something where no one knows what you're doing for an entire day, it's not on any plan, it's not on any spreadsheet, that may be too long. By contrast, we can't have a checklist and a game plan that's every last detail, right? That's sort of showing the sausage being made. So there's somewhere in the middle there where we want to provide kind of a right-sized way of measuring our progress. How many of us do estimates by kind of hours and dollars? Okay, so there's a lot of estimating going on here. There's kind of a new way to do estimates, and it's called the story point methodology. We've adopted that, and we just think of it as action points. User stories. There's a session on that here this week, and it's a fantastic, sophisticated way to build really excellent solutions. So look into user story and story point methodology. At the very least, try giving your estimates point value. Part of the purpose of that is that there is sometimes cognitive bias when you're talking about hours or when you're talking about dollars. If you provide estimates only in hours, there can be judgment and confusion in the conversation of, well, maybe you're too slow. And what we want to do with points is we want to focus the conversation, kind of turn shoulder to shoulder with someone that we're working with. Say, let's talk about the work. Let's not talk about me or my performance or my speed or my cost. Let's first make a plan together about what we need to accomplish. And so that's where we recommend a bit to check out this story point estimating methodology. If something is a large item, then of course what you need to do is break it down into smaller items. Does that make sense? So there's kind of a Goldilocks principle here. Not too small, not too big. You want to provide those waypoints, provide that information, but not too much information. The other thing I like to say is an encouragement to you, a challenge perhaps. Become a fast estimator, and then you'll become an accurate estimator. I'm a fast estimator first. I like to do the back of the napkin estimates kind of as quickly as I can, because it can be a little challenging, a little difficult. But if you're estimating and you get fast at it, then almost every meeting that you're having, almost every big checkpoint that you're getting to, then you can become good at re-estimating the backlog. We all know change is going to happen, and flexibility is such a key element of a strong game plan, right? Think about those waterfall designs and game plans that were a part of the moonshot, and how change and those change approval requests probably turned into millions and millions and millions of dollars, right? Because you're talking about goal and sub goal and sub goal back in the good old days of engineering, and we're beyond that now. So we need a rapid application estimate methodology to go with our rapid application software, to go with our small teams. What do points mean? Well, it's sort of like poker chips. They mean what you ultimately represent them as. Over time, what you'll find is that you can start to calibrate. You can start to get your own points, your own sense of a metric out of a point. For us, we like to think of it as about a half a day. That makes sense. Any questions and thoughts about estimates? Yes?
Questions. Number one is for points, do you do it as a team effort or do it come from it?
We do like to say that points allows us to have anyone on our team estimate at any time. If you think of a point as about a half a day, it's a sort of a universal metric. So we do like to share those. Now, often up front, our sales teams, myself, Tom, and Heather, will be building out those plans for others to execute. But we do like to think of that as kind of a universal metric. That makes sense?
Because if you map it to half a day,
Yeah.
it's no longer a relative estimate. It's absolute estimate, right? Which then map to hours and costs and those kind of things, which will help. I think will facilitate the team to adopt it. It's definitely the entry point, but then kind of to me kind of lose a little bit of what the point is. But
Yeah, you're trying to rough it in, right? And that speed element, I believe, is a worthy trade-off, because you're right. You're not going for accuracy. You're trying to see that it'll all come out in a wash. Some you'll be way ahead of schedule. Some you'll be behind. So what you want to do is calibrate and get that velocity over time.
the second question.
Yeah.
When you do estimate, do you differentiate user stories versus tasks, deliverables versus?
Great question. Do we differentiate user stories versus tasks? We used to. A couple of weeks ago, we changed our whole methodology and we call it building action plans now, because it just got a bit complicated. And what was it, Einstein, that said, make things as simple as possible, no simpler? We're in Apple's headquarters, right? Simplicity it creates so much value. So we do blend them all together now. We just think of them as points, whether it's building something under the hood that no one's ever going to see versus an actual user story. that is client facing.
They're just like in the same backlog.
Same backlog. That's right. There are tasks to be done. Yeah. Good. Prioritize. Key element of prioritization is that we want to facilitate some democracy. I like to say, let's be highly accountable to the things within our control. But that also means let's not be accountable to things that are outside of our control. We want to enroll others in the choice. In fact, if others on your team, if other stakeholders are putting in the sweat to make the hard decisions about prioritization, what you're actually doing is you're sowing the seeds for the release. Because now you've got engagement with your stakeholders. And if you need that engagement, drive user adoption, you'll have started with the prioritization. How many of us are choosing to set only one number one priority? I know it can be tempting to have, well, we've got 2 or 3 number ones, we've got 2 or 3 number twos. Consider trying to drive for only one number one. At any one time, the thing that matters most is where are we at? What are we doing next? It's really all that we can control. And I think that key element of having only one number one can really bring a lot of clarity, and it can bring, I don't know, some teeth, perhaps some passion into those meetings where you've got a lot of stakeholders. Someone's going to win, someone's going to lose. That person really cares about this. That person cares about this. Well, give me that clarity. Set me free so that way I can go do my block schedule and make magic happen. But I can't have multiple ones. It's on you to decide that. And then re-ask every meeting, if those are 2-week meetings or 1-week meeting, do these still look like the right priorities? It takes 1 second to just say that sentence. Do these still look like the right priorities? Just confirm. Because if something has come along and all of a sudden we're working on priority number 3, that can of course very quickly erode trust. Sometimes we'll get asked, hey, this is just a quick one. I don't know if you've ever feel that. This is just a quick one. Will this impact deadline? Can we still get all this done? I don't know what it is about end of year as well. Like I'm done with end of year, you know? December's no fun because there's something about that old school management style of turn the screws, come on, young man, let's get this done by end of year. That doesn't obey science, right? I mean, it's just, right? We've all felt that there's this sense that, well, if I apply more pressure to you, and maybe sometimes I've even done this to others, then perhaps somehow we're going to create more magic than we would have in any other month. So I would recommend consider saying this to your stakeholder. All work impacts timeline. What do you mean when you say, will that impact our timeline? If I have to do it, then yes, because that means I'm not doing other things. So everything has a trade-off. I'll sometimes even try to get into the language a bit too. Can you kind of guarantee me this date? Are we going to hit this date? Let's hit that timeline. Well, you'll see right here on the screen, we have a forecast date. We have a projected date based on our backlog and based on our velocity. So let's, again, kind of turn shoulder to shoulder. Let's look at the work that needs to be done. Let's use just a very simple framework to say, where are we at? What do we need to do? What is the defined game plan? And what does that suggest? What do we think about that? Because if we don't love that, then we need to make a change. We need to bring someone else on. We need more budget. We need to reprioritize the list. But it's not about me, it's about us. So let's think on that. Let's think about this together. Last note on this slide is to I don't know if you've ever found this, but if you're in one of those big waterfall engagements, then you go into every single project management meeting and you're behind the 8 ball. None of them are fun, right? You can start to feel like you're in the doghouse. And the doghouse is not good for you, but it's also not good for your engagement. It's not good for your project. You can't do your best work not back in the doghouse. So another element of this Excel document, which I'll walk through here briefly, very shortly, is that we need to be able to have a sense that the old is gone, that there is a water under the bridge. We need to reset and clear that out. Maybe there's lessons that we can learn, but you can't go into every single project management meeting and say, we're behind budget, we're behind timeline, we're behind scope. And what are we going to do to dig out? Let's reset, let's make a new plan. Does that make sense? Awesome. Any questions on prioritization?
I love that quote at the end. We'll go to the outhouse. Nice.
It's a really hard one. Yeah,
It's like a mental switch.
it is.
And
Yeah.
it's kind of, to me, sometimes it's easy to do that, but when the entire team, including the client, is in that place,
Yeah.
it's difficult to say that to them. And also like turn that mental switch in your own head. But I definitely agree. Like, to me, it's like let's use the word project management. It's not about meeting those original goals, but make the best trade-off decision between cost, schedule, goal, hopefully not quality.
Yeah.
Using your best resource right now.
That's right. Absolutely. Love it. Thanks for sharing that. Showing progress. We got to celebrate success, right? We have to build a culture around us that celebrates success. Showing our work actually builds the trust. I've got a client who's really funny. He's got some great sayings, many of which are not appropriate for this meeting. One of which I love is I see better than I hear, right? And he sort of says it in this funny way. I see better than I hear. What he's saying is, I don't trust a lot of my technology vendors. I've learned to not trust my tech vendors. Show me, and maybe I'll believe. And I kind of love it because I think it's actually reality. All of us are on the spectrum of trust, right? I had someone coming over to do some roofing work, just a small little thing, and I can't see my own roof from where we're at, but boy, they had a great process of taking photos and showing me everything that they did, and they had a clear work order, and that built a ton of trust that says, hey, that's maybe a kind of company that I might refer going forward. It went that extra mile with showing me, not just telling me that the work was done. Big element here is that progress has a psychological payoff. Think of that as a little bit of an extra rocket booster thrust. When we show our work, we actually, whether we get negative feedback or positive feedback, when we show our work, we get a payoff. So that's going to be a part of that ideal workday for you, right? If you're thinking about structuring that ideal workday at some point every day, share it with someone else. And you'll find that over time, you're getting some sort of psychological payoff, according to Teresa Amabile and the Progress Principle. A simple 3-step framework for some of those progress meetings where you're going to show your work is let's show what we did, let's intake any new items, let's decide what's next, right? Those are the 3 basic elements of a good progress meeting is let's show what's new and let's decide. So be thinking about that. One note about this showing don't tell is I've got a friend who runs a family business, and he was telling me, he called me and said, hey, is this normal? I go into every single meeting with my teammate who's my technical database person, and he's always pen and paper. It's always pen and paper. And we make a lot of lists, and he seems to listen really well. But he never brings his computer, and he never puts it up on the screen, so I can never really see what's going on. And he's like, I've got time. He's a chief operating officer, it's a big business, but he wants to get his hands dirty. He wants to see what's going on. And I said, I do think that that's normal. I do think that can often be the case that we may feel a bit of internal resistance to revealing where we're at. Sometimes, again, we're not as far as we'd like. I'm not sure if anyone's ever read The War of Art. It's just sort of this old school classic book about creativity. It's mainly for writers with like writer's block, right? but I think it applies great for those of us that are in the creative arts of innovation. He talks about this war against kind of this inner gremlin called resistance. And what resistance is saying to us is, hey, this is important. There are some stakes here. And therefore, like they said last night, we want to get it right. Right? And that get it right thing is good. And he says that's the sign that you're actually pushing against something that matters. And the only goal is just push through. Every meeting should have a screen share, in my opinion. How many of us are just screen share fanatics? Hop on a meeting, up goes the screen share, right? Yeah. I believe it's good. Lastly, release. Releasing is our true rocket booster. Releasing gets us that tangible, concrete feedback. Sometimes we do have to have a bit of tough love. I'm not sure if anyone's ever felt this, but you can measure what's in user acceptance testing, what's in UAT. If you've done estimates with story points, you can say, hey, how much have we been working on that's actually being used right now? The phone call at the bottom there that I worry about the most is, you guys have been working for us for a little while here. What do we have to show for it? So what we want to do is want to mitigate that risk. Even, in my opinion, even if it's more expensive, even if it's harder, integrate with that old solution. If you can mitigate that risk, everything else takes care of itself. I do find also sometimes we have to bring a bit of tough love. We have to be willing to kind of hold. Like Braveheart, right? They say, hold. We have to be willing to kind of say, we've been working together for a while. I need you to go ahead and start using it. Yeah, but I'd love to keep going. We need to build this, and this, and if you build all of that, then I'll use it. I don't have a great antidote to that conversation. It's tough because sometimes we just need that adoption. We've got 2 engagements out there that are right there, and they're kind of on the precipice, and we need them to use what's there. Anyone have any tips on that one? How do you get through and get that release used when they're asking for?
Hard one, just.
Just do it. Thank you. Just do it.
Like, hey, got it.
No. Yes. Yeah.
Even if it's in the presence of temporary use or occasion training.
Parallel path. And, yeah. It's not as hard as you might think. Just start using it.
I think you have to make them aware of the consequences if they don't. I go into this pretty hyperbolic language about the project could fail. This could all be on you.
Yeah.
You're the only one who can tell us if this is really working or not.
Yeah.
You need to compare the numbers against your current methodology and make sure they match, or else you could have catastrophic losses. I go that far because that's the only thing sometimes that will, get people to understand how important that is.
I believe it's true. I mean, if you fail with that initial adoption, the whole mission can fail. I find that encouraging. I might beef up my hyperbole. Great. So let's hop into the progress tracker tool. We got about 10 minutes left, which is perfect. What I've done in this Excel document, which could be made into a FileMaker solution very easily, is I've tried to capture, you'll see very small on the screen, the 3 minimums that I believe need to be a part of your tracking methodologies. It could be in Trello, it could be in Jira, it could be in FileMaker, it could be in Excel. It doesn't really matter, but we need to at least have a plan. We need to have some sense here. I'll click into the second tab here. Some sense of how we're making progress, and we need some sense of priorities. Now, I did have a little bit of fun with some of the math that goes into this and some of the formulas, and I left it all kind of pretty open here, so you can kind of just reverse engineer this. If we completed a task, what week was it, and how many points did we accomplish? What module was it associated with? If we've not yet completed a task, it's still a part of our backlog. So I'd encourage you, drop in a few dates here, just to kind of have a play, just like we were talking about, a little adoption, right? Throw in a few dates, add some scope, add a module. What you should see is that if you've got a plan and you know when your last meeting was, you can build something like a 6-week time frame. Maybe it's 3 months, whatever you choose. And I believe this is a key element to not going in the doghouse, is when you're reporting that progress, I believe that we should, if possible, not report over all time, every single meeting. It's not relevant. It's water under the bridge, and let's get it out. I think there's a temptation to say, well, that's more data, it's more information, so let's just capture it all. Yeah, but it makes me feel like junk. So let's get a fresh set of downs here, and let's start. The key element here is that we're capturing this sense of velocity. Okay. Does that make sense? If we know what we've been tracking against and we have a sense of when something got completed and ticked off the list, then we can get a sense of that velocity. And that will go up and down. But overall, with 6 weeks of history, we can get a rough sense, hey, we're getting after it. Or, you know, we're not able to put in the effort because people got pulled off onto other things. We're blocked. If we've got a blocker, that'll show up here. Lastly, once we have that velocity, we've got a sense of pace, and we reprioritize our list, then we get some really fun stuff. What's done, what's remaining, and therefore, what is this forecast delivery date? So this is my favorite formula right there. What is that forecast expected delivery date? Yes?
I want to push back and ask a question, and hopefully you'll set my fears at ease. If I'm not constantly reviewing the overall budget, I'm worried that I'll get to a point where, oh, I need to let the client know we're out of money next week.
Right.
And they're going to be mad because
Right.
we've been working for 3 months.
Yes. I would say to that personally, do also zoom out to see the forest for the trees and think about that overall spend and initial expectations on an ongoing regular meeting with key stakeholders. Have that be a separate meeting, have that be a separate conversation. One conversation which I believe is really critical is, how are we doing as a team? Are we executing well with where we're at and what's next? And in some ways, I would say that conversation is also absolutely critical. And your sense of change tracking. Well, let's understand how we've drifted from those original expectations. I think that that can be captured and helped if you've got a clear track. But oftentimes, it's kind of a different group of people I might find that you really need in the room for that conversation. Perhaps it's the executive leadership where you're going to be negotiating for more budget. That makes sense? So it's less of kind of a regular thing that you need to hit, in my opinion. Yeah, please.
Two questions. One is a bit about what he was asking. And we got a trouble with a customer in the past where our stakeholder was changing the priorities, which weren't the priorities of the paying customer.
Right.
This can be very hard to track, and yes, we lost trust with the customer because, hey, my whole project isn't done, but we work on all those things. So how do you manage that? Does it happen?
Yeah, I've certainly seen that so much too. Absolutely, where you're bouncing back between priorities. This is priority number one this week, and then that becomes priority one the next week. I would say that's probably on the top 5 list of complaints we might get from one of my teammates. Says, this client is killing me. I'm thinking about that original conversation we had about that ideal workday. If your priorities are shifting, that is a quick way to erode that sense of progress. I don't have any silver bullet for that, so that would be a good one for perhaps after the session. Let's put heads together and figure that one out. A couple things here just to wrap up. I'll bop through these. I'll leave you with these slides as well. Just a couple of takeaways. I believe that you can create a context for yourself to do your very best work. And I believe this element of celebrating progress, not projects, is a key way to kind of just make work really enjoyable and also really impactful. We'll finish with a few kind of slogans that hopefully will stick with you. Maybe these would be a little good one to, pick one or two to kind of write on your wall. Pressure's a privilege, right? We want to bring on the pressure, but in a right way. Be measured by the metrics that are the best metrics for us. Love it. Photos of the slides. Turtle power, right? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? But turtle power. Let's make progress this week. And it's amazing what you can accomplish one step at a time. Estimate quickly, right? Estimate early and often. Become highly accountable to the things within your control. Play small ball. Break it down into small chunks. Sometimes our estimates are they're really big chunks, and it doesn't create the right kind of accountability and transparency. Forecast target dates based on an action plan. Never commit to a date without a plan. Hard to do. We need others to do our best work, right? Other people sharing our work can give us that energy boost. We want to ride the energy bus of that socialization before we kind of go into that block schedule. Earn trust from a series of small commitments met. I like to say, well, then let's get ready to go make some commitments. It can be hard to put out estimates, but actually estimates and commitments are opportunities to build trust. Progress feels good. That's probably the biggest headline here. And hit your reps with consistency. That element of consistency and getting through these cycles is what really makes it come alive. Any other thoughts, questions, things that you want to hit? We've got about just 3 or 4 minutes here. Otherwise, I would also say if there's a feedback form mechanism, this has been an incredible privilege for me. You'll have to, when my wife is here tomorrow, if you see us around, you'll have to make fun of me. I prepared so hard for this because it actually really is a lot of fun for me. So you've given me a great privilege to be able to do this. If you've got positive words of feedback or you've got constructive ideas for how I can improve in doing this, I would love that. If there's a form somewhere, that's great. Also come find me and I would appreciate the conversation. Anything else that you'd want to hit? Any other thoughts, questions? Got maybe just another minute.
I just have one comment.
Yeah, please.
Doing this for 25 years.
Yeah.
And one thing that we've really found is that every single client is different and you have to adjust your methodology somewhere.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're very budget conscious because they're a middle manager who's selling this thing to the guys above them.
Yes.
Sometimes they're just perfectionists and you have to account for the fact that there's probably going to be a lot of change during the process of building as you roll out all these demos, right?
Yes.
And
Love that.
and so how, like in a point system like what you're using, you might have to assign more points to those things right from the get-go, just to keep it from looking like massive scope creep. Someone who has a vision they can't necessarily articulate.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that progress culture assessment, maybe even for some of those clients where you're coming into a tricky political or bureaucratic organization, absolutely the complexity goes up. To execute the exact same scope, it's the exact same scope, it's the exact same game plan. But in one culture is very difficult, and another culture might be very easy. So, yeah. Please.
How do you get your first, how do you estimate the first budget for the customer? Like they want this project, they have a vague idea of the project. How do you get to the first estimate and give them an idea of how much it's going to cost them?
Yeah, so a couple of thoughts on that. One is that it is very difficult without doing a full discovery phase, right? Sometimes discovery phases, if you've got a 1,000-hour project, can be even 3 or 4, sometimes even 500 hours to have the entire business process analysis done.
Yeah,
to break down all the requirements.
You fall in the waterfall.
And then you fall into waterfall. So I think what we try to do is that we do have a lot of upfront conversations. We sweat hard at the beginning during our sales process because we want to kind of get it right. And then also we try to estimate with the greatest level of accuracy and fidelity over those first couple of things that we're going to do together. And we try to ask for and try to talk through some of these principles to say, if that's module 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, let's follow up on an iterative basis to break all that down and estimate that when we get there. We're going to know so much more if we can first start to produce something together of value. But it is tricky because sometimes, yeah, but what's the total price, right? So sometimes, maybe the last comment on this, because you're getting me going here. I love this. It's very energizing for me. Sometimes that can be a collaborative conversation where, in that case, the client might have a sense. So I just gave you a lot of accuracy about module 1. How many other modules are there? There's 4 other modules. Are they bigger or smaller, right? So if this is going to cost us, 100 hours of effort, you tell me, right? What is your estimate? What is your budget, right? And then let's work backwards from there. Okay, they're all about the same size, you believe? Well, great. Let's go with that, right? Now, that's not my fixed bid, of course, right? Because how could I give a fixed bid when we've not done discovery? But that's a conversation, and that can be enough of a sort of a common sense understanding to get started and build out that module 1. Fascinating question. We are at time. Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here.